Members, if I can ask you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Braintree District Council Cabinet. Starting earlier tonight because we have quite a lot on the agenda, including the Council's budget and council tax for 23-24. So, as I say, we're starting a little bit earlier than we normally would. Usual housekeeping, there's no fire drill expected this evening. In the event of the fire alarm going off, we will exit the building by the 2 fire exits and assemble in the car park. So without more ado, we will move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. We have apologies from...
Apologies, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Abbott this evening.
From the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Abbott. Okay. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, Councillor Cunningham?
Thank you, Chairman. As we're discussing matters related to the budget, could I declare non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council, please?
Similarly, I would declare the same interest as a member of Essex County Council. Are there any other declarations of interest anyone wishes to make? No? Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. There were 2 previous meetings that I need to sign the minutes of. The meeting that was held on the 28th of November 2022 and the one that was held on the 6th of December. They have all been circulated. You've had an opportunity to read them. Are you happy I sign them as a correct record? Agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 4, public question time. There are no members of the public who wish to raise any questions, so we will move on to item 5 under the Housing Assets and Skills. And I'm delighted to welcome Emma Palmer, the CEO of Eastlake Community Trust.
Chairman, can I just ask anybody who's got any technology with them to make sure their microphones are switched off on their technology and not on their phones, because that's when we do typically get feedback. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I think we're all right now. Okay. Sorry about that. To welcome Emma Palmer, the Chief Executive of Eastlake Community Trust, an organisation which, of course, started its original life here many, many years ago. And delighted to welcome you, Emma, and to hear the progress that's going on. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. And I appreciate your time this evening and the time of everybody else's to listen to this. And I thought it'd be useful to take you on a short journey and go back to sort of Greenfields and the business case for merger that we talked to you about in the early part of 2020. The merger occurred in July 2020, and ahead of that, there was a series of commitments that was given to accelerate either Greenfield's corporate strategy or indeed Combs' corporate strategy, and deliver additionality both in this district and in the rest of the areas of our operation. So this slide here provides you with an overview of what some of the main items for that business case were. You'll see that one of those is particularly, or two of those are particularly in relation to new supply. So we acquired Iceni as part of that merger 12 months after the original merger in 2021. That's delivered efficiencies in terms of how we develop new homes. The original business case for merger expected 3,800 starts on site in the first 5 years, which was an additional 1,300 compared to the two organisations singularly, and that there would be a balance across all of those 10 years, so shared ownership, general needs rent, and general needs split between affordable and social rent. We also committed to additional money in our business plan for community-based work, and that actually, during the business case, we said that would be an additional £1 million in the first 3 years. What our board actually signed off was an additional £3 million in the first 5 years. And I know a number of you are involved in our All In programme, and that's part of that commitment. We also brought our entire repairs service in-house, and that was, as I say, they're completed ahead of schedule in May 2021. We expected that to be done in October 21. And then an ongoing commitment to local employment and those 50 additional apprenticeships. And you'll see there that we offered 44 Kickstart posts, and we've still got 6 of those post holders that have been assimilated into the business, and 12 succeed at East Light apprenticeships. So we're really keen to make sure we continue to promote that and continue to run that beyond the original business case. So in terms of delivery, we delivered against all of those promises, with the exception of one. We've really struggled to maintain a level of social rent in our new supply. In terms of grant availability and financial availability with new build sites that are not Section 106s. So we've delivered in terms of numbers, but we haven't delivered in terms of the number of social rent. And that's one thing that we are particularly focused on. In terms of moving forward, we are giving better consideration to cost of use of a home. So it's not just about whether a rent is charged at social or affordable rent, but things like the service charge that's applicable, how energy efficient homes are. Because from our perspective, social rent comes along with a service charge. Affordable rent is a whole encompassed charge, and so therefore certainly at the moment when you've got energy consumption being included in service charges, we're very aware that our social rent tenants may well be paying similar amounts to affordable rent. So that's one thing we're more broadly looking at the moment. So this is what East Light is now. This is the next slide for you. We're just short of 13,000 homes. The regulator for social housing issues regulatory judgments, and there's 2 of those. One is how we're governed, and we have the highest governance rating, and one is our viability, and again we have the highest viability rating. And that's not in small part to the business planning that we do, but also the business planning that was done by the legacy organisations, and that includes Greenfield. So, we're very grateful for the history on that too. A number of, or almost all of our neighbouring housing associations now rate a viability of 2 rather than 1. And that doesn't mean to say that they're not viable, they're entirely viable, but what this means is that we sit in a slightly better position as it stands at the moment. You'll see there that we remain a strong local employer. We've got 450 employees. That's not all full-time, and obviously they work right across the operation, so everything from our home solutions team on the front line into our customer service centre and then back office staff. As part of the merger, it was really important to us that we modernised our employment offer and that we continue to be a strong employer in the district. So we actually harmonised terms and conditions for all our staff. We didn't leave them on legacy arrangements, so everybody has the same terms and conditions. And we've introduced some fairly forward-thinking terms and conditions as part of that. So, for example, all our male colleagues have the same access as our female colleagues to what is maternity leave. So maternity and paternity leave are equal. And we've invested in both our office hubs. Those of you that have been to our Braintree hub, you'll see that we've created a community space there that is open to all of our community, so our tenants, but our communities as well. Anybody's welcome to come in and use that space. There's free Wi-Fi and biscuits, coffee and fruit as well, if you're interested. That's my plug for you to come and join us there. We've also got a partnership hub here in Braintree, and we've got up to 30 partners that work out of our building. And again, they are there to help us strengthen our service offer. So a number of small local charities, but some larger housing associations. I know Peabody work with you here, but they also provide a service in our office too. So we work alongside them, and what that means is because our staff are working alongside those partners, we're able to signpost people much more quickly, particularly if they come in. And I've already talked to you about our ongoing commitment to our apprenticeship programme and local employment. We're doing quite a lot of work with Essex University as well to help strengthen that offer. So just to give you a bit of a flavour of our customer-facing performance, you'll see there that this is what we've delivered since merger, so 300 homes, 85 full shared ownership. Our average rents are 55% below private market rent. I'll talk to you about cost of living and affordability in a moment, because that doesn't escape me that's critical for all of our customers. But our rents still are typically quite low in this district particularly. You'll see that 62% of our homes are currently EPC or higher, and we have that focused target to invest in our homes to get that energy efficiency across the piece. Customer feedback remains strong, so we have an instant feedback process where people are asked to rant and rave, it's called, rate us out of 5, and we generally 4.7 is the current average, with our repairs service most well liked. But we are very aware that, generally speaking, in society, customer sentiment is waning, and we are part of that too. Customers are more frustrated, and their expectations are become increasingly difficult for us to deliver against some of those. And you'll see that we did have a backlog that was caused by the pandemic and the restrictions that were in place during that time. That was cleared by December 22, but we do have an ongoing issue with some of our contractors. So our performance around our gas servicing and gas repairs is not where we would like it to be, and we are experiencing some issues with that. We've got a mitigation plan, and we hope that we will be back on track by the end of March with that, but you may well be seeing some of that too. And then, of course, damp, mould and condensation is a particular issue for us at the moment, and that's had an impact on our service delivery. And again, I've got a slide that I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment. This coming year, we hope to ramp up our sophistication around customer engagement. So that's our single highest priority for the coming year, as part of kind of East Lights strategy. So we will be looking to engage you on that and launch that, and there is additional resource going into making sure that we improve our engagement offer. We're also doing some customer segmentation work this year that I'm happy to share with you once we've got that back, so that we truly understand what our customer base is and what's important to people, and that's due Q4 of this year. So next slide here is about damp mould and condensation. So there was a call from the Housing Ombudsman Service in November 22 for a call, November 21, there was a call for action, and at that point we reviewed all of our damp mould and condensation cases back to 2014, so that went back into both legacy organisations. And at that point, we didn't identify any particular common themes that meant we had a particular type or style of home, or anything that we could particularly identify as being an issue. The regulator for social housing asked all housing associations to complete return by the end of this last calendar year, specifically in relation to damp mould and condensation, and off the back of the tragic death that happened in Rochdale. We have no Category 1 or Category 2 hazards. What that means is, in terms of those properties that may be identified where people's health and ongoing health is exacerbated by damp and mould. Since November 22, and when the damp and mould situation hit the press, our customer demand in terms of people reporting damp, mould and condensation has gone up by 1,000%. So that makes that very difficult for us to respond to, I'm sure you'll appreciate. And what we've had to do is redirect resources away from our routine repair service for a period of time. Now, I think we've done that we've done that temporarily for a short period of time, and we are now in a place where we are back on track with that. But again, that's resulted in a delay in some routine repairs. But for us, it was important that we get under the skin of those damp and mould cases to make sure that we don't have anything that we hadn't previously identified. And that work continues. We've got a specific dedicated team that go out every time we have a report of damp, mould and condensation. We send that team out to immediately assess the position and clean any damp and mould from the property. We have regular board and senior team oversight. So what that means is I see our progress fortnightly, and our board see that monthly at the moment. It's important for us. We take it very seriously. And then finally to say, we have established a really good relationship with council officers here, and we're talking to you about how we can help and how you can help us, because we realise that you're experiencing an increase in those inquiries as well. I'm sure there may well be some conversations about that or questions about that later, but I hope that gives you an overview. And I think what it's important to say is that from a sector perspective, particularly following the political interest in us and damp, mould and condensation, our customers are less tolerant and more frustrated, and so we are finding that more and more difficult to engage with people as well. So again, any support and help that we can get from you in terms of being able to proactively engage with customers would be really useful, as I say, because that's extremely important to us. So that concludes my slides, but I did just want to talk about cost of living and kind of where we are in terms of what we know about our customers as well. We did an affordability study in September and October last year, and what that showed us is that 63% of all of our tenants are losing sleep over money worries, and that's not just their ability to pay rent, that's kind of general living, and we know that 83% have switched off heating as a result of that at some point. 33% of our customers are finding paying their rent difficult, and we have seen an increase in our overall rent arrears. Arrears in the sector is averaging currently at about 3.3%. Ours have traditionally sat, particularly in what I call legacy greenfields, somewhere between 1.4 and 2%, and they're currently sitting at 2.26%. So we know that people are struggling, but we are a third lower than the sector in terms of outstanding debt, and our evictions are a third lower as well. We also know that people are struggling with a delay with universal credit claims, and of course that adds to the ongoing pressure for them. So in terms of our customers, we have a raft of support services that we've got in place. We provide short-term financial support in the form of either food or heating vouchers. We do have a tenancy sustainment fund where we have used that to help vulnerable customers pay for heating, or if they have a debt on a meter that they've been unable to get out of, we have used that. And we will work with customers on payment plans for rent arrears. We've got some specialist benefit advice in our team as well, and so people will be signposted to a specialist in that team, and we've got a specialist that will help around kind of general tenancy support and wellbeing, so debt and budgeting and alcohol and drugs as well. But I mean, I think we understand that customers are struggling, and we're in that place where we're trying to balance the rise in costs for us. Our labour costs have gone up and material costs have gone up between 10 and 15%. And so repairs and investment in the stock is more difficult. And of course, you will know the Braintree stock gets older rather than younger, and so investment there's more investment required than less. Next year, we're increasing our capital investment by about 40% because of that. There is the annual rent rise is due April, so rent increase letters will go out this month, and so I'm sure you will hear about that. From a perspective, our business plan is built on a central government rent formula, which is CPI as it stands in September plus 1%. This year, there's an additional cap, which caps us at 7%. So it won't be an 11% rise. It will be capped at 7%. But obviously, what that does is bring with challenges for us around that business plan, because it leaves a significant gap in our business plan when we're also pledging further investment in stock. So a difficult one, but I take you back to the original slide that said, you know, we are a viable organisation, but we're facing significant challenges like you, I'm sure. Thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you very much, Emma, for that. That was really first class in terms of giving us an overall insight into the organisation. I know you've offered to answer any questions. I'll throw it open to colleagues. David Mann, Councillor Mann.
Thank you. A lot of really strong, good news there. Thanks very much. Couple of questions. Was taking repairs back in-house the right decision? And you say that you're struggling with your commitment to social rent, but you're addressing it. How do you think you're going to resolve it?
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of bringing repairs in-house, I absolutely think that's the right thing to do. I'm convinced that our Home Solutions team are one of our best advocates and adverts, actually, and the culture that we drive, it is one that has been there for many years, which is you do the right job. And if we contracted that out, I recognise that a contractor will drive a profit margin first and foremost. So I think for us, the driver that we treat the home as if it's our own is the right one. I think the reality is the pandemic has an impact on the service, but I think it would have done had we have had a contractor. And actually what we're seeing at the moment is the one area that is contracted out, which is our gas servicing and gas repairs, is the one that we're struggling with the most. We simply don't have the same control as what we do when it's in-house. So, but we've had recruitment challenges in recruiting to our home solutions team as much as contractors have, but we've been able to, as I say, control that. We've, in terms of cost of living, for example, for our staff, we've tried to do what we can with them, and they were given a cost of living payment, not senior staff, but those below heads of service were given a cost of living payment in January to help them, and that's helped retain our very valuable home solutions team as well. And we also offer our staff a £200 wellbeing grant every year, and they can spend that on pretty much what they want. And this year we expanded the criteria so staff could use that to pay their energy bills if that's what they wanted to do. So that's helped us with retention and therefore the quality of the labour. In terms of your second point around new supply and social rent delivery, that's more challenging, I have to say. We simply find it very difficult to find sites and compete against private developers to then offer social rent on sites. But it's one of the conversations, as I say, that we're having to try and be a bit more intelligent about it, and rather than simply saying, well, it either does or it doesn't stack up at social rent, actually, how do we better charge for the cost in use of a home, and therefore we take into consideration the energy efficiency as well as the rent and any service charge that's payable. I realise I haven't got the silver bullet that tells you how we will deliver more social rent, but I hope that I've given you assurance that we've got an eye to it and we're trying to work through it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thank you for your presentation. And as Councillor Mann said, some really good stories out of that. When it comes to sort of community housing, I think there's sometimes a perception amongst the customers, your customers, that actually maybe smaller community organisations looking after it a little bit closer to the residents, understand each of the individual properties probably a little bit better, and I think that's understandable. Obviously, you've gone through a great process of change over the last few years, the absorption of Greenfields into this larger organisation. If you were to sort of signpost one overriding benefit to the customers, to the really important people in all of this new way of working, of being a larger company, a larger organisation supporting them, what would you say that would be, and what has it been?
Thank you, Chairman. I gave a number of business merger case bullet points to start with, and of course new supply has to be one of those that is really important. The additionality there of those additional homes, 1,300 additional homes that neither Greenfields or Colne, that's in addition to what Greenfields and Colne would have built anyway. But I think life's moved on, and what I would say is that the resilience in the size of the organisation does bring with the organisation is more resilient than those two organisations would have been on their own, which means that we are in a place where we can continue to commit to significant amounts of investment in existing homes that would simply not have been there had the two organisations been working on their own. I take your point about being close to the community, and that's one thing that I think we need to make sure that we continue to work on really hard, and that's why we've got that priority focus next year around customer engagement, and that's why we've also, and our board, committed to that additional money above where the original merger business case suggested, to invest in not just tenants but in the wider community, to ensure that kind of the broader objectives of both Eastlight and for example, Braintree district, you know, are met in terms of those quality homes as well as communities. There's something been released quite recently called the Better Social Housing Review. And that challenges the way in which we deliver services, and I think that's something that we will be reflecting on over the next year. I'm really conscious that by creating specialist resources in the business in order to help people in a way in which they need help from kind of the specialist knowledge or expertise, that quite often makes it quite confusing for customers on the front line, because they have then a number of people they need to speak to. And I think one of the things that we need to work on is being much clearer about kind of who the local presence is and how that works. And that's certainly a conversation that we're going to be having over the next year.
Councillor Tattersall.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Two just quick points. In my experience, damp and mould problems seem to originate from lifestyle that people live, not turning the heating on, not ventilating, not opening the windows and stuff. That's my first point. Just like your comment on that one. The other one, and I couldn't find the right word for it, but we're impressed, I think, here by the activities that you carry out, along with Community 360, I have to say, with your work and support that you're doing on health and wellbeing initiatives. You should be very proud of some of the staff who work hard on that one and come up with ideas and seem to be full of enthusiasm and energy for all that. And of course the leisure centre staff. So I just want to make that point about it. They are really very, very good.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your praise. I will take that back to the staff because it's their hard work, not mine, but I will take it back to them. Thank you. In terms of damp, mould and condensation, there are several different trigger factors for that. Where there are design faults, where properties are not well kept, you can get penetrating damp or rising damp that will be generated by the factors of how the house is either being maintained or how it was originally designed. We've also looking at where we have then gone on to insulate. So, for example, we've done quite a lot of wall insulation, and of course that stops properties breathing in a way that they may have used to have breathed, and so there will potentially be some issues there. But the reality is that our stock gets older, and our stock is lived in by people that generally fill the house because demand is so high for our homes that we never under-occupy homes, so they are occupied. All the rooms are occupied, so there's not kind of lots of space. And these older homes are lived in by people that are less able to turn the heating on and open the windows. So I think there are a number of trigger points. We've looked at our data, and there is nothing that suggests there is a particular type of house, or indeed a particular type of household. We've found it very difficult to kind of target who we might need to target, or which homes we might need to target that are more likely to be susceptible. We will continue to look at that data, and there may well be some correlation between external wall insulation, the age of windows, and then some property type, but equally, we know that customers are struggling to afford to heat their home, and particularly if it's an older home, it doesn't retain the heat. I know that from my own home. It's difficult to heat. So I think we have to accept that they're the circumstances that we're working with.
Thank you. Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As the Cabinet Member for Housing, I'd like to thank you for coming along, Emma, again, and I think these sessions are really important, these updates are really important for us to refocus the transparency and the communication, I think, between us and East Light the relationship has always been very key, and an open and strong relationship going forward is obviously what we hope to continue with. I do have one question though, and it's connected to your new build developments. Quite often you spend invest a lot of money in the landscaping schemes for the new developments, but what seems to happen is there doesn't seem to be a sort of a maintenance plan going forward, and your team spend a lot of work and effort in making the schemes look really nice, but then I've seen this at first hand, and a couple of sort of cuts and the shrubs are cut away, and then it does not look nice at all. And when you sort of speak to the maintenance people doing it, they sort of agree that sort of big mowers should be used to sort of do that sort of work and things like that. And it doesn't look really great, and it's just a shame with all the effort and the money that's spent into that. So I don't know whether you wanted to, or I was hoping you sort of comment on that in regards to if there's anything better that we could be doing planning for the landscaping of the new build developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Bowers. I think that's a fair challenge, not just on new build sites, but I think it's a fair challenge across our stock, actually. Our grounds maintenance specification may be lower than we might otherwise like. It's a balance between the cost of that and then the onward charge to customers versus the level of service that we provide. There are some blocks in this district that actually decided to opt out of cleaning, not grounds maintenance, but cleaning, and do it themselves because they didn't want to pay the charge. And we've had similar requests around grounds maintenance, but the reality is we do need to maintain a particular level. So I think that's a fair challenge, and it's a piece of work on service charges generally, not just around grounds maintenance, that we're doing this coming year. And I think then we need to take a decision around, well, actually, if it is a different level of service that we expect and customers expect, it's then a balance about, and how do we get that for the best value, and in what way did we deliver that, either through contractors or indeed through our own staff.
Councillor Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Sort of the other side of the coin, could you tell us what you're doing towards helping with climate change, i.e. carbon reduction, and just as importantly, increasing the environment, the wildlife and nature, for not just your tenants, obviously, but for the district as a whole, please?
Thank you for the question. It's interesting because when we put the business case for merger together, net zero carbon didn't feature in that business case at all, and you will see that. And very quickly soon after, we realised that we needed to respond to that and get more on the front foot. We've done a full audit, so we now understand what we've got. We are now building into the organisation's business plan investment in order to get us to a position where we know what the investment's required and over what period of time. Given the challenges, even this year, around the difference between our rent formula and the rent cap this year, it does mean that we won't be able to accelerate our move towards net zero carbon in the way that we had truly hoped to do. We've launched our net zero carbon or sustainability strategy, and this year I expect that we will start to deliver, particularly around some of the corporate objectives in there. So that's around us specifically reducing our carbon footprint, but I think that's certainly our board and the senior team have identified that's one of the things that we need to really start to kind of roadmap. And now we've got the strategy, then we will do that. We have a particular sustainability steering group that's a mix of staff and our board, so it's certainly a priority. but it's not something that I can today say that we've got a series of deliverables. But the kind of things that's in the strategy, just to give you a bit of a flavour, as well as investment in properties and kind of the physical aspects. We're also looking at how we can position, for example, the apprenticeship programme, so that we've got resources in-house that we can install some of those alternative energy sources rather than just gas or electric heating. So we are looking at the kind of sustainability of this as well.
You do have a seat on our climate change working group, and I think would be very useful if we could perhaps get an occasional update from your side as to what you're doing. And again, you've sort of, should we say, skipped the environmental side a little. I mean, we're looking at it by changes in mowing regimes and things like this, but that, of course, doesn't suit everyone. So we have to educate people that, you know, we're not actually cutting grass more infrequently to save money. We're actually doing it to try and save the environment.
Yeah, come back, Emma, and then Councillor.
Please, Chairman, sorry. Two things. I will certainly make sure that we get executive representation so they can come and give you an update very specifically about that. And secondly, it sounds like there's plenty we can learn from you, so it'd be useful that we do that.
And Councillor McKee.
There's been a lot in the press recently about Centrica, British Gas, breaking into homes to install prepayment meters. And I guess with the number of homes you have, and with the likely cohort that's living in them, have your tenants, residents, suffered from a gas board breaking into the front door and installing these meters, and how have they reacted to that intervention?
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, we have. There are customers that have suffered from that, not just British Gas, but any number of the energy companies. So yes, our customers have suffered. We've tended to pick that up as part of gas servicing, where people don't have money on the meter. And I said to you, we've got a tenancy sustainment fund, and we have used that tenancy sustainment fund where people aren't able to kind of access help elsewhere. We've used that to help them get themselves into a place where they can clear a debt and have some money on that prepayment meter. But it's most certainly an issue for our customers, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Mrs Powell.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I've got two questions. The first one is I'd like to congratulate you on a lot of the work that you've been doing, and particularly with this All In. Now, I'm very impressed with what you've been doing with this All In, particularly in Halstead. But I have been asked by various people that you are a housing association. What are you doing spending lots of money doing this when it should be somebody else's responsibility? But the work that you have done on the one in Halstead, which is girls' periods, which is a very topical subject at the moment. But I think they do have a point that they feel that the money should be going into the housing rather than all these other issues. That's my first question. Second question is, I get a lot of contact by local residents in Halstead with complaints. Some of those are elderly, vulnerable people, don't do social media, they only have a home phone, and they can't get through to you, make contact, or understand at times. I mean, one of them had no heat. In the end, his daughter went out and paid privately for somebody to come in and sort it out for them. And ground maintenance, as we heard Councillor Bowers say, I personally have had an interest in one, which I've complained about, and they've said, well, you need to contact the owner. So I've gone back and said, well, you are the owner. and I've not heard another word. They're all little things which are minute to everything else you do, but they're very big to the people that they're dealing with. Today, dealing with a mould issue, which Caroline is going to deal with you, that people don't always understand the process or have the ability to understand the process. If not, some of them wouldn't be living in specialised housing. So I'd be grateful if sometimes you can think of those vulnerable elderly people that can't deal with these things for themselves.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you to hear about the good work with All In. And yeah, I think that it's a fair challenge to say, well, should a housing association be doing that? I say two things. I think it's two things to that. The first is that Eastlight is rooted in a Greenfields legacy, and at Stock Transfer we absolutely committed to the community gateway ethos and culture, and Eastlight is we deliberately took that through to Eastlight, the community gateway model, and that still stands. So actually in our constitution and in the organisation's rules, we are a community organisation and not simply a landlord, although the landlord function and duties have to come first. And if I was sitting here saying to you that we were unable to continue to fulfil our business plan commitments, so that viability thing that we talked about earlier, then I would be saying to you that we need to make some very difficult decisions about where we do invest and what we prioritise. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is we will do an impact assessment on how each of those all-in programmes have run and what impact it's had for our tenants and the wider community, and Essex University are doing that, so it's not something, we're not marking our own homework on in that respect, and I think that would be really useful for us to see where we've had the greatest impact, because I also think that when you invest in a community, some of those other instances and troubles are dealt with that you might get with tenancy, with tenancies, and you know, if you get the right intervention and the right work, then antisocial behaviour tends to fall away. And there are other things, there are other benefits that are not necessarily a tangible pound for pound. But it's a fair challenge, and it is certainly one thing that we challenge ourselves with. In terms of our accessibility, I've already talked about the model. So when I responded to a question over here about you know, that we've got specialist people and sometimes you don't know who you need to speak to, and actually we need to be much clearer about a community lead and somebody that's on the ground. So we're very aware of that. And equally, that point around doing the work that's due on our customer segmentation, so we really understand who our customers are, and that will be critical for us in terms of how we might reposition the frontline service delivery. And you know, that's a piece of work that is live at the moment and we're working on. So I would hope that that delivers some efficiencies for us, but B, and most importantly, that we become truly accessible to all parts of the community, because you're absolutely right. There are many different reasons why people can or can't access our services, and those are some.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Emma. There's been obviously a huge range of questions which have been put forward, and thank you for the way in which you've answered them. From a personal point of view, it's not very often one gets the opportunity to make or be part of a major policy decision and see the outcome of that decision nearly 20 years later. My mind went back, and I'm sure I know there are colleagues around here, at the cross-party approach that we had to our housing stock and the decision to go down the line of the approach that we took with Greenfields. I have to say this evening, I think reinforces my view that we took the right decision 20 years ago, and as our major landlord in the district, I think we can have a fair degree of confidence that our residents will get a good deal. You've heard some suggestions on various things, and I'm sure if we were in front of your tenants, we'd have some as well for ourselves accountable. I just want to thank you so much for coming along tonight and being so open and answering such a wide range of questions. Thank you very much indeed, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm sorry to keep you so long on that item when you've got so much to do, but good luck with the rest of your evening.
No, we deliberately spoke. I didn't want to cut short this, and I think we've given it the just time that it deserves. So thank you very much indeed. Yes, you don't have to stay. It's not a punishment. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to item 6 under the general heading of overall strategy, which is the Council Budget and Council Tax 23-24 and the Medium-Term Financial Strategy 23-24 to 26-27. This was circulated as a separate report, and I will invite Councillor McKee to introduce the paper and move the recommendations. Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of the report clearly is to determine the 23-24 revenue and capital budget and council tax level to be recommended to full council. There are some sub-objectives through 1.2 to 1.5. I won't read them out. They're in your papers. That's the papers and strategies to be agreed. And I'll move straight into the budget. I'm going to address my comments to first of all, to the changes since November 22, because there's quite a lot gone on, but that's the last point that the Cabinet looked at this budget. All the papers have been done on the provisional local government finance settlement, but today we have the final settlement. About 3 o'clock this afternoon, we received an email confirming that actually our core spending is, as the papers in front of you, there's one change which won't change the papers and it won't change the MTFS, is being awarded. We have under a settlement funding assessment, we have an incremental positive, I will stress, 29,243, which I won't address in this because I'm going to address the paper in front of you, which was the budget as you've been reviewing up to now. Very quickly, there's been a net increase in cash grants from that assumed in 23-24, but includes one-off funding guarantee, so uncertainty over subsequent years remains. CPI-linked increase in retained business rate income, UHUM's bonus allocation 1.4 million. As I go through, I'll address what that's going to happen to that 1.4 million allocation. Council tax referendum principles increased to 3% or 5% in shire districts. Essex business rate pool, again today, was confirmed that we will be in that rate pool, which gives us a benefit to our position. Other grants, homelessness prevention grant, if you look in the document, is substantial, £437.7 thousand in 23-24 and 458,000 in 24-25. There was a consultation period, and we, in fact, submitted our response on time on the 13th of January. Other key changes, pension fund, there's a higher ongoing employer rate, but it's offset by reduced contribution to reserve. We are going to continue putting into reserves so that when we want to avail ourselves of a single payment at some stage in the future, reduce the cost, we will have a reserve set aside to make that payment. Staffing budgets have been updated for current establishment and other inflationary adjustments. Additional investment income due to interest rates. Again, the interest rates, as they've risen, I think 7 times in the last short period, and now this week, I think 4%. We do benefit from incremental income from our short-term deposits in money markets and the like. So there's a positive on the budget from those interest rates, which I'm sure our residents would find as a negative as their mortgages go up. But you know, the swings and roundabouts. Reduction in growth bid for PMO, and we'll come on to what that means when I talk about it later. The council tax base has grown clearly, and we get benefit in increased council tax. A parking protocol has been reviewed, and we anticipate relating to increase from commuter parking charges. And the funding for Silver Bowl ends. I'm sorry that Councillor Amber's not here, but the funding for Silver Ends Bowl Club for drop curb is now in the budget, and we'll refer to it later. Moving straight ahead. Right, our proposals. The overriding aims have not changed, and I will, with one addition, which I think you're not surprised to find. This year, we are supporting residents through the cost of living crisis. And I think you're aware of that already. We've talked about it, and we've heard from the previous presenter. It is a massive problem to our residents to get through this next 12 to 18 months. And so the budget is being tuned in favour of supporting our residents, which is not that we haven't supported them, but we're now focused much more on that. We've done consultation, we've invited comments from stakeholders, we've had meetings with Town Council, and the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee, some of you were present at the one on Wednesday, I think, on the 23rd and the 1st of February, has had a rigorous inspection by that committee, with members asking significant questions, and I think some of those may well come up again tonight. There's been a lot of publicity, press releases and the like, so this has been flagged and communicated well to our residents, the content of the budget. Supporting residents. With the extra £1 million to support residents impacted by the cost of living crisis has come from the new homes bonus allocation in 23-24. So we're using that specifically on a three-point plan to be delivered across the next 2 years. One, providing food security, and I've been told very recently that particularly in the rural areas, they are very interested indeed in working with us, because the current food banking system doesn't touch those rural areas as well as it might, and this will allow those food banks to actually extend their range and reach into the rural community, where we've already discussed, I think, over the last year, some of that is hidden deprivation or stress, so we'll be able to touch those people through communities who will be able to know where they are. We're going to help the most vulnerable by supporting existing community groups and increasing access to facilities that enable physical and emotional well-being. Investing our service and improving the way. So although it has been a tough budget, I think you've all seen, not just this authority, but every publication you read, many authorities are going through a significant funding crisis to make that budget gap closed. But we're still continuing with the A12 Street Cleaning Partnership, which is an initiative started by our operations team to make a better use of resources across the various authorities that clean the A12, to not only be more efficient, but also to make sure that that gateway to our district is kept as clean as we do with our district ourselves. You'll be pleased to know the Council Community Grant Scheme is continuing. We're strengthening our project and programme management through a new programme management office. We're still, although it's a tough year, we're at over £900,000 of new capital investment has been made in this budget. Addressing the financial challenge. So there is still a financial challenge. But I'll come on to at the end, you'll see just exactly what the gap is in the MTFS. But over £1 million of new savings and extra income that are identified, some of which have come from officers looking at their services, and being about 300k of that is looking at how they can do things better. And the sort of what we're known as member savings and income has contributed the rest, but that's again some of the efficiencies and the addressed income come into that £1 million. Discretionary fees and charges have been carefully reviewed, and they continue to be reviewed. And we've considered changes to our parking protocol to increase tariffs for certain things, like commuter parking, for instance. We've confirmed our intention to introduce a charge for collecting green waste, and I don't intend to go into any detail on that green waste. I think it was covered under the Scrutiny Committee extensively, and I would advise anybody listening to this to watch the YouTube channel of that meeting, and you'll get the views of where we are. And it's not in this budget, I stress. It's for March 13th Cabinet meeting to review that process, and then it will affect the 24-25 budget. The gap, I talked about the MTFS, so our proposals have closed the gap from November when we last reviewed it at 1.4 million in 23-24, with an overall total of 2.403 for the gap. We now have a £644,000 gap in 23-24, which we intend to close using balances. But I'll stress the gap, that doesn't reduce our structural deficit and the gap, so the overall gap is still north of £2 million over the MTFS period. Addressing the financial chart, some of the activities are underway. I think we've discussed them endlessly. People around this table are involved in many of them. Investment Development Programme, the IDP, is still active and working to try and close that gap by making efficiencies and effectiveness of our capital and invest those into the marketplace and into resources that will in fact bring additional income to the authority. We're reviewing all our commercial activities. We've got asset management review going on to look at the way we've got significant over 40 million of assets that are owned by the authority. The income from that is north of £3.3 million, I think. But we can make better use of that asset by if you like, turning over some of those assets to get rid of the ones that are less performing and turn that into a higher performing asset portfolio. We're doing service zero-based budgeting reviews particularly on operations to start with, as it's our biggest and most expensive service, and that will be taking place in the 23-24, and that should lead to improved efficiencies but also reduced cost. Shared services and collaboration are a big part of what we do, and I'll draw your attention to the procurement service that we led the way in sharing procurement across local authorities, but also in Essex County Council, and the team that did that actually won an award recently for the best team in the procurement across Essex. And of course, devolution will affect our proposals going forward. So I'll come to the council tax. It's recommended to increase council tax by 2.5%, giving a Band D tax rate of 194.31 pence, which is an extra 9p a week at a Band D. We will still remain one of the lowest council tax rates in Essex and well below the Shire District average. The Council Tax Support Fund will give discount to those on local council tax support of up to £25, additional discretionary support for others alongside our current hardship schemes. Next steps. Well, this is the first next step. We're just completing it, hopefully. The next one is, of course, on 20th of February, will this go to full council and agree their budget. So I will now, won't read all the recommendations out because it will take me all night, but I will just point to item 2.1 to 2.1.7, which are the recommendations to council, and the agreement from Cabinet we're seeking is on 2.2.1 and 2.2.2. That's delegating the authority of Cabinet Member Finance and Corporate Transformation to agree requests for unspent budgets, etc. So I move that recommendation, Chairman, and seek your support.
Thank you. Councillor McKee, is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Chairman.
I was at this stage going to invite the Leader of the Opposition to make comment, but as he's not here, I can't do that. So I will move to Councillor Mann, I think, has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points. First of all, to congratulate the administration on the openness of the budgetary process. You have allowed us all as members to participate in it, and you've taken what are now customary wider soundings in the community, and so absolutely nothing comes as a surprise to us this evening. Secondly, I think that we all have to acknowledge the context against which you're operating. The financial position of even well-run authorities like this is dire. The outlook is no better for some years to come, one would suggest. I think a third point is that you've asked the right sort of questions that you would expect a responsible council that really cared about the community to ask. I don't think, however, we can fault you about that. Yeah, I guess on some matters of details we might have come to different conclusion, but I think the overall thrust of the budget is a strong effort to be fair in very difficult circumstances. And final point, the real feedback that I personally have had, you'll never guess what it's on.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs. Pell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Mann has just said, and I don't think any member can say that they haven't been involved in this process. Some have decided not to come, but they have had the opportunity to have their say. And whether you liked what we said or you didn't, you had to do it, didn't you? So that's their own fault if they've missed the opportunity. And I'd like to say thank you for the process that we have gone through. It's been very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you both. You're actually making me feel very guilty because there is something now that we haven't shared, and in fact my cabinet were not aware of until at least midday on Friday. And so we've been working over the weekend and we didn't know whether we would get it done in time. But on Friday I received a letter or an email from the leader of the county council, which I'm now going to read, and then explain where that took us on Friday and with Councillor McKee and officers over the weekend. The email from Councillor Bentley was, "Dear Graham, you recently raised with me the future of the Millennium Way Slips project. I share your disappointment that the project was unsuccessful in the Levelling Up Fund bidding process. As you will be aware, even with the generous offer of £2.5 million made by Braintree District Council, funding for the project remains significantly short of the anticipated cost. You will also know that, like all authorities, the County Council has faced a difficult budget-setting round. As a result, we've had to carry out a stringent review of our capital programme. I'm sorry to inform you that it is very unlikely that we will be able to include the Millennium Way slips in our programme in the near future, though we will keep it on our long list of potential projects should funding come forward from other sources. This is pending any government announcement on the wider A120 project. I appreciate that this will come as a disappointment to you, particularly given your willingness to work so collaboratively. I want to assure you, however, that this decision only strengthens our determination to push for improvements to the A120 along our favoured route from Galleys Corner to join the A12 at junction 23 just south of Kelvedon. I know that we share the view that upgrading the A120 is decades overdue and urgently needed. A new dual carriageway will make the network safer, support the flow of traffic and encourage economic growth. The County Council remains committed to working with Braintree District Council on this important infrastructure project. Kind regards, Kevin Bentley. As I said to colleagues, there wasn't a word in that letter that I could disagree with. That did mean, however, that I felt we needed to look at the position of the 2.5 million, which we have set aside, I think I'm right in saying, at least 5 years in terms of that. And looking slightly towards Mrs. Pell, I didn't want another situation where we had a significant sum of money resting at this time in particular on our books without a reason, without doing something with it. So we have given consideration as to what we should do with that £2.5 million, which was previously allocated, money which came from the New Homes Bonus. Colleagues, Cabinet members and members of the Council will be aware that we have pretty rigorously kept New Homes Bonus out of our general fund and used it for infrastructure improvements of a variety, whether that be superfast broadband or other infrastructure things. However, I think it's clear that it would be some time before the Millennium Slips might come, and indeed, I'm sure if there's a choice between a Millennium Slip and the extension of the A120, I think most of us, if not all, well, won't be all of us on this council, because we know there are some groups who are against it, but would be for the extension of the A120. So over the weekend, together with Councillor McKee and officers, given thought to what we should do with that and how it should link in to the existing budget which we have before us tonight. Some of the principles that we wanted was that this clearly, if we use the reserves in any way, they are one-off. Once they are spent, they are spent. And therefore we should not use it for anything which would have a recurring impact and indeed perhaps a detrimental impact on our medium-term financial strategy in the years to come. We also wanted to make sure that it would give most reward back to our residents in terms of the way in which the money has come to us, which is because of the enormous amount of new housing that has taken place across the district over the last few years. So what I'm proposing to Cabinet tonight is that 2.5 million should be used in two specific ways. That we should put £1 million of that to a transformation reserve so that we can carry out important work which will be needed, I think, for all local authorities in terms of how we make our services more efficient, more effective, working with others, sometimes tasks which need a bit of seed corn money to get them going. And so our suggestion to Cabinet tonight is that £1 million should go to that transformation fund. The remaining 1.5 million we think should actually go back to our council tax payers. I listened, although I wasn't present, I listened to the PMT, the Performance Management Committee meeting on Wednesday, and there was some suggestion that we had not listened to the outcome from the Cost of Living Working Group regarding the level of council tax, and the suggestion that from that group that it should not be more than 1%. Councillor McKee and I gave strong consideration as to whether we should reduce the amount of council tax from our proposed 2.5% to a lower figure, either 1% or even with no increase. We have rejected that idea for two reasons. If we were to reduce the council tax to 1%, that would have an adverse effect on the MTFS in this year of 156,000, which would, of course, carry on through the lifetime of the MTF and would make the challenge, which Councillor McKee spoke of, even more difficult. The second reason we rejected it is that because council tax is a regressive tax, the Band H taxpayers would actually get 4 times more, 4 times less that they would have to pay than a Band A taxpayer for the Braintree District Council element of the council tax. And in these particular times of the cost of living, which we've heard mentioned by our guest speaker tonight and by members, we did not think that giving most to those who probably could afford most was a way that we should go. So for that reason, we have rejected the idea of reducing the level of council tax that we are proposing, namely 2.5%. So that means that there would be no impact on the MTFS of what we are proposing. What we are going to put to council is that a sum of £25, which we're going to call the new homes bonus and growth dividend of £25 will go to every taxpayer, some 60,000 across the district. That means that the greatest percentage increase goes to those, the greatest percentage payback goes to those in Band A housing as opposed to Band H. The complete opposite of what it would be if we were to just go for a lower council tax increase. And basically it will mean for Braintree District Council that a Band A taxpayer will actually pay 17.5% less than they currently pay for the Braintree District Council services. Those on a Band D will pay 11% less, and those on the top rate of Band H will pay 4% less. We did consider whether we could skew it more, but given the time available and trying to keep things not swallowing up money with too much administration and bureaucracy, we felt, Councillor McKee and I, that that would be the best way to go. So we hope that when we go to full council, and I have to say, I haven't even had the opportunity to talk to my own group about it, so this is not in any way trying to keep people in the dark, that council will accept that what we are proposing is very reasonable and attempts to give further help to those of our residents who most need it, on top of the £1 million that Councillor McKee has already spoken about. So there'll be in the region of £2.5 million worth of help going back into our residents to help our residents this year. One small point we also considered, Councillor McKee, I think, mentioned that. Did you mention we had an additional £29,243? That's right. Correct. Today, we weren't expecting £29,243. So we are suggesting that, as it caused a little bit of disquiet, that we will not reduce the payments to parish councils for street cleansing for this year, which coincidentally was 29,000. We have not been in collusion with the government over the sum of money on that, and we will still be £243 better off. But that is for this year. For this year. I cannot commit any future administration as to what they may or may not do on that. But that certainly will, I think, be helpful. So in addition to the paper that you have in front of you tonight, Cabinet, and with the recommendations there, the intention will be that an amended paper, all being well, will go out to all members tomorrow, which will be the paper then that will be considered by Council at its meeting later this month. And it will have the addition of the following recommendations: to revoke the ring fencing of the 2.5 million of previously allocated new homes bonus for the A120 access improvement package, known colloquially as the Millennium Slips, that we will establish a new transformation reserve of £1 million from that Millennium Slip reserve. Thirdly, that a £25 new homes and growth dividend will be made to all eligible households in 2023-24 in accordance with a dividend policy which will be produced as an addendum to the report. That's estimated to be about 1.6 million. We have titled it quite deliberately, New Homes and Growth Dividend. That is where that money has come from. And if it were not for the fact that this district had, in my view, successfully in most cases, taken on those new homes, that money would not have been there for our residents. The fourth recommendation will be to delegate to the Section 151 officer to make technical policy amendments relating to this dividend policy to ensure that it meets the criteria of the Council. Now, I recognise that tonight, strictly speaking, was the last opportunity for any members to submit amendments to our budget paper, which we had before us this evening. And I think it would be wrong not to afford members the opportunity to submit any amendments to these new proposals, which will be incorporated in the paper that will be circulated tomorrow. So I am adding a further recommendation that we recommend to the Chairman of the Council, in consultation with the Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer, to agree to allow any member the opportunity to submit an amendment motion to these revised recommendations under the urgent provisions set out in the Constitution. I think what we have in mind, although the Chief Exec will inform all members, is that following receipt of the revised paper tomorrow, any amendments should be submitted by close of play on Friday. Any amendments to those amendments to be submitted by... Sorry?
Apologies, that's not the timescales that have been discussed.
Sorry, right. Well, that's what I was told. Substantiates my view that this was not something we had in mind years and years ago. So the timetable, please, Emma. Sorry.
So the timescale that the Monitoring Officer has advised is that we'll circulate the addendum report tomorrow as soon as possible.
Right.
We will then give members the opportunity to submit their amendments by noon on the 10th of February, which is Wednesday of this week. And then the amendments to the amendments by the 15th. Sorry, I do apologise, Chairman. So the amendments will be the 10th of February by noon.
Which is Friday, yes.
Yes, I do apologise.
Thank you.
And then on the 15th for the amendments to the amendments.
Which is the Wednesday.
The Wednesday. Thank you, Chairman. I do apologise for that.
Thank you, Emma.
Sorry, Chairman, for explaining.
So, as I say, amendments by Friday, amendments to any amendments by Wednesday, and then full council to decide. And obviously, I'm not aware of the detail of any amendments that may or may not have been submitted by close of play today. I'm sure there may be some. There will be an opportunity for any members who have submitted them to see whether those amendments are still relevant and wish them to go forward, or whether they wish to withdraw those and submit any new amendments by close of play. Close of play or 3 p.m. What time did you say?
Noon.
Noon. By noon on Friday. So, members of the Cabinet, first of all, John and I apologise for the fact that we haven't been able to keep you bang up to date, because we've been working on this over the last couple of days, but the two of those were the weekend. Although you had a reasonable idea of the sort of direction that we were thinking. This clearly means that for all our council taxpayers, as far as the Braintree District Council element of the council tax is concerned, people will be paying significantly less than they currently are at the moment for this 23-24 tax year. That it will not impact on subsequent years, because we've not gone for a reduction in the council tax itself. And also, it sets the council in a strong position to pursue the transformation agenda, with having resources available for that. So that I will be putting as an amendment, if you like, to Councillor McRae's proposals this evening, and they will. Oh, and also I should have said we will take out any suggestion, the proposal that the 29,000 saving from the parish and town council cleansing agreements will not happen for the year 23-24. That will stay in there. We remain committed, because of our green credentials as an administration, not to continue with paper-produced timetables for collections. And I think that's something which I would anticipate that all parties who have an interest in the green agenda would want to support. We will, where there is a specific request, be able to provide them for individuals. In other words, if someone doesn't have access to the website and internet, etc., we will do that. But we will not put them through every door at a cost, I think, around about £30,000 a year. We don't think that that is a good use of very scarce resources this year, and also not a good use in terms of every piece of paper has a tree behind it. So those are the proposals. I leave it now up to Cabinet to discuss. Are there any comments anyone wishes to make? Councillor Mrs Spray.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I am disappointed. I was disappointed that the Millennium Slips were not going to be funded from the Levelling Up Fund. I'm not totally surprised that the County Council feel they can't back that at the moment, given, you know, the very difficult financial situation we all find ourselves in. I remain, I think, reasonably confident that they will happen at some stage in the future, but I do absolutely agree with your point and the point made by Councillor Bentley that the upgrade of the A120 remains an absolute priority, and we should keep that certainly at the top of our agenda. In the meantime, fully support the proposal to spend this money, the £2.5 million, for the benefit of our residents, and I think it's entirely appropriate that it comes from the New Homes bonus. I know that there are people who have issues with the amount of house building going on in the district, but it is needed, and there is any amount of data issued nationally to support the view that we need new homes. And, you know, as I drive around the district, which I do a lot, I can see people moving in to new homes as they spring up. So it is, you know, it is to the benefit of the whole district, not just to provide the new homes, but that the money we get from the New Homes bonus should then be spent in the way we are suggesting. Absolutely support it, and I would like to think that you know, that it will garner support across this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Spray. Like you, yes, I'm disappointed with the Millennium Slips. I suspect there are some members of the council who would actually be quite delighted because they've never supported it. I would rather not have had to take the money away, but I think we just have to be realistic, and I accept the point. Any other comments at all? Councillor Mann?
Oh, not at all surprised about the slip roads. I mean, I think they've been, you know, a nominal budget item for too many years, and I think the county have made a right decision, which does release these sort of funds into the budget. Ingenious distribution of them, but I think that any relief that can be given to our residents in this time of cost of living crisis is going to be welcomed by them.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I should just say that the Chief Executive whispered in my ear and said the £1 million on transformation will be the balance that is left, because until the bills are actually done, we won't know whether it's 1.5 or 1.6. So those figures will be slightly different, but the bulk of that will go to the New Homes and Growth dividend, going back to the people who paid the money in the first place, but not in the same proportion. Redistribution of wealth. Councillor Tattersley.
I'm sure that I'm going to get into trouble for saying this, but I really can't wait to read on social media how the initiative announced tonight by the leader of using the Millennium Slips for a new and home growth dividend will be the result of lobbying by any specific opposition party. I hope that this initiative will be recognised as the result of a listening and caring council.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchley. Any other comments at all from anyone? If not, are you happy to accept the recommendations that were in the original paper you had before you tonight, amended by the amendments that I have read this evening, and that the revised paper will go out to all members tomorrow to become the paper that will be considered by full council at its budget meeting? And are you also content that we ask the Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer to recommend to the Chairman that he permits an extension of the time for amendments and amendments to amendments so that there can be no suggestion that we've brought in something at the last moment which no one, you either have to be for or against it and you can't finesse it in some way.
I think that's very important. I think that's very important, Chair, and I think that's a very fair proposal.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Cabinet members, are you in agreement with the budget and the proposals? Agreed? Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to people who have worked very hard, over the period. Dan, as Chief Exec, we've been extremely grateful for this very supportive work that officers have put in at very short notice for us to be able to reach this today. Right, let us then move on to item 7 under the operations and commercialisation, Hackney carriage fare increase, and I believe that is Councillor Van Dolken. Yes, Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The report is on, as you said, the Hackney carriage fare increase. As stated in the report, it's to consider the request made by 39 Hackney carriage proprietors in the district to amend the table of fares by 1, increasing the start fare of the mileage tariff from £3.70 to £3.90, which would result in an overall average 3.1% increase. 2, increasing the cost of waiting time from 35p to 40p a minute. And 3, an increase in what is now known, or what is known as soiling or cleaning charge, from £30 to £100. The justification for the large increase in the soiling charge is that understandably it takes into account the fact that the vehicle may very well be off the road, drying out for a day or two, depriving the driver or licence or owner of income. So there are 3 recommendations. That the request to agree to the increase comes into effect from the 1st of April 2023, that the statutory public consultation be commenced, and that delegated authority be given to myself as portfolio holder responsible for licensing to consider in conjunction with officers the results of the 14-day consultation, and that in the event that valid representations are made, to agree to a revised implementation date not later than 2 months after the 1st of April. Going a bit into the background of this request, historically it has been agreed the review of Hackney carriage fares should take place annually to avoid large increases every few years. However, there had been no reviews or increases between 2018 and July 2022, in great part due to COVID. The main justification for the current increase requests are the rise in fuel costs, plus, of course, overall inflation pressures. The report before you includes quotes from the trade about the fuel cost issue, which will be familiar to all of us who are drivers. The report goes on to explain that 54 Hackney carriage proprietors in the district had been polled prior to the request for increases. Of these 54, 39 or 72% agreed with an increase, while the other 28% either disagreed or abstained. The proposed increases for Braintree are broadly in line with other Essex authorities, and I'm advised that since the report was drafted, the officers from a large majority of other local authorities at a recent Essex Joint Licensing Officers Forum stated that their councils are either going through requests for increases or have recently increased tariffs. So the options before us are that the Council may decide to either approve or decline the request to increase the fares and charges mentioned at the beginning of the report. If increase is not approved, the July 2022 table of fares will remain in place, which would have an impact on the cost for drivers and proprietors and might impact on the viability of providing hackney charges in the district. I ask Cabinet members to agree to this report with increases planned to take effect on the 1st of April.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dolken. Any comments or questions at all? No. Do I take it then that you are happy to support the recommendations put forward by Councillor Van Dolken? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Move on to item 8. Under the Finance and Corporate Transformation, the Strategic Risk Register. Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chairman. This shouldn't take long, and if you read the report, you'll find actually this comes before us twice a year. Traditionally, this is a time when the management have reviewed the risk register, and in the summer it'll be a member event that review it. But twice a year we look at the risks, the strategic risks, not operational risks, not project risks. These are things strategically that we need to manage, and each risk is managed by a corporate director and has the responsibility of a cabinet member around this table. If you look at the register, and the best way to look at it is to look at the actual picture, because that tells you that the actual level of risk has remained constant. If you then look at all the action plans and the progress to date, you will notice they've all been updated. So there has been a significant amount of action and activities going on to make sure they're reviewed and updated. And I know it will need updating again following this meeting, because it clearly talks into the medium-term financial strategy about 22-23, and that will, for instance, will get updated with the output from this meeting. The recommendation is that the Cabinet approve the updated Strategic Risk Register and the management action plans for managing the high rate risks as detailed in Appendix 1. I so move, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor McKee. Any comments or questions at all? Councillor Cunningham.
Just a quick comment, Chairman. No, thank you, and thank you to Councillor McKee for bringing this forward. I think, bearing in mind unprecedented circumstances of the last year, I think this is a very positive assessment of where we are, and it underlines the authorities' sensible approach to risk over the years, but also actually bearing in mind the great fluctuations and the great uncertainties of previous months, and the resilience of the authority, both financially and organisationally. So it's I think a positive assessment of where we are at the moment, and that's to be applauded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Tattersley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've seen how this process has improved and developed over the years, and I think what we've got now is a very clear picture about the challenges that are facing the authority in the next few years. Did I understand Councillor McKee said that there will be a members' evening so that any member can have an input into this process if they attend the members' evening?
Thank you. I did say that. I mean, I shan't be here to promise that, but I suspect, as it's become custom and practice, that the senior officers first of all review it at this time of the year, and then for the second review, it does go to a members' evening. And actually, if you remember, the last 2 years, it's been one of the more exciting members' evenings, because most members have an opinion, and quite rightly, about are services risky, are they not, what do they want to see better, and it does improve the appreciation of the risks and the policies and the strategies that we are adopting to mitigate those risks. So I suspect, I can't commit it, but I suspect the leader may wish to commit, or the officers may wish to commit, that that will continue as a custom practice. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments at all? In which case you're happy to accept the recommendation? Agreed? Thank you. Move on to item 8B, the IDOCS contract award. Again, Councillor McKee. Page 45.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. This is a 3-year software licence, which is actually of a maintenance to the value of £200,000. Is actually looking at the software that we're using in across the whole authority. That's uniform, document management system, total land charges. There has been a look at whether we should go out to retender, but the disruption by changing supplier would be significant. There has been a negotiation done to make sure we've got the best value for money. So the option that we should we should extend the contract to the existing supplier, given that these are systems that are embedded within the authority, and changing them would be both expensive but also extremely risky if you were to try that approach. So the recommendation is to complete the procurement and to delegate the award of the contract to IDOCS as per your papers. I so move.
Thank you. Any comments or questions at all? No? So I take it then that you're happy to support the recommendation? Agreed?
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, that brings us to the end of the public part of the agenda. That we have one other item, but I would seek your agreement to resolve under section 100A bracket 4 closed bracket of the Local Government Act 1972 and the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements Access to Information England Regulations 2000 as amended, to move into private session excluding the public from the meeting, including terminating the webcast, in order to discuss the contents of the private report 10A, which is likely to disclose exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Are you in agreement to that happening? Yeah, thank you. Now this has been agreed, I will now pause to allow the meeting to move into private session and for the public to leave the chamber and the webcast to